Welcome back to the Performance Perception Podcast, talk show, radio show, whatever we feel like calling it that day. I'm your host, Travis, and with me I have both of my co-hosts. We have
Dwight.
I'm Tyler.
All right.
I yelled my name. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
So that was unintentional.
This time we've got our audio figured out a whole lot better, and we've got the camera. Say hi, everybody. All right, so hopefully the little bit of criticism we got, which is very appreciated, this takes care of some of it. It took us a little while to get back together and do this again, a little longer than a month, I would say, just by a little.
Yeah, it didn't take us long. We're on episode 2, and we've already failed at our first part of this podcast, and that was getting one out every month.
Yeah,
it's going right along as planned with everything else that we do. We immediately screw it up. So,
and without making mistakes, you don't know how to get better at it. So
yeah, exactly.
But there's a lot that's happened in the month and a half or 2 months or whatever it's been. I think almost 2 now.
Yeah, probably since we actually made it.
Yeah,
it's probably been like a month and
a
couple weeks or something since it was put up.
But there's been a lot that's been going on. Dwight hasn't been able to win one race yet this year.
You got to save some for the rest of us.
Yeah.
It's been a rough year.
Yeah. Tyler got a girlfriend.
I did.
And an El Camino.
My block is decked and ready to be put together.
Yeah. You not just your block, but you've got all the parts.
I got them all, yeah.
I
need an oil pan.
I saw it all sitting out nice and neat whenever Tyler and I went to Chincoteague. We rode our Harleys down there. That's another thing we did.
Yeah.
That was quite a ride.
Uh-huh.
So, welcome back to the show. Hopefully y'all aren't too mad at us for taking too long, but we're doing our best here. And I'm sure as the winter months come and the fall months come and everything starts to calm down a little bit, we'll be banging these out every week.
Yeah, you'll be getting one every 6 hours. We don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone that listened to the first show, though. We're going to be getting better at these. We're just constantly learning with it.
Oh, yeah.
We're not professionals at this, so.
Yep. Yeah, and we don't have $5,000 to dump into. Well, I mean, I'm sure collectively maybe, but we don't have $5,000 to dump into this stuff, and we're just making what we got work. So, so on this show today, we're gonna be diving into the book a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and say that I screwed up, and I don't really have any excuse for not reading this, other than I just didn't have time to do it. Especially I was supposed to do it last night, and things just didn't go that way. So I'm gonna be asking questions and following along in the book. And
do you have your book?
This is my book.
Oh, that is your book.
Tyler didn't bring.
I got
his
one
own.
on my phone.
Oh, okay. So Tyler did bring one.
All right.
So we're gonna go over camshafts.
Yep, cams and valve trains
Yep.
is what the heading is in the book, the chapter title.
And for those that may forget, we're working out of David Vizard's Max Performance Small Block Chevy on a budget. Yeah, get you one.
It is a very good book. I will say it's very in depth.
Yeah,
you should almost have a basic understanding before you read one of these.
Yeah,
or read this one.
Yeah, for the fact that it's only 140 some pages, 160. 160 pages, there's a lot of information in it. It feels like a novel. So, before we dive into the book, I figure we'll share a little bit of what's been going on, a little more in detail, and then we'll dive into the book there towards the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And this one here will not be as long as the other one. That was something that we had to figure out on the first one. We found out that we can be super long-winded, so.
I've been told my whole life that I'm super long-winded, which is fine. You got people that are short-winded and some that are long.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Am I going to have to take that from you? No phones at the table.
That's my book, dude.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. He showed me his phone, and it was a black screen.
It's right here, man. It's right here.
Alrighty. So, Dwight, let's catch everybody up on how your racing's been going this year. How's the ornery cuss and your point standing in the SBRA series?
It is not good. It is not good at all.
Why is that?
I keep getting beat. There's no other way to put it. I was 5th overall last year in points out of, I don't know how many cars there were, 50-some, 60-some. So I did pretty good last year.
Yeah.
And I feel this year I'm driving better than I was last year, but every time I go up, I mean, I'm 7 races in for this year, and I'm putting down good runs. And I'm just not pulling into the lanes next to the right person. You know, they have a run that's just, this much better than mine. And like the runs I'm having are ones that would beat most of the other runs in that round, and I'm just not getting it. But that's racing. That's why we keep going back. It tests you a little bit though whenever you go up every week just to get beat
and go home.
Yeah. It's I can't be upset. It's not like I'm really driving bad. I'm just getting beat.
Yeah.
It's the way luck goes, and it just happens to be happening every week now.
So
I did win a round this year.
I was gonna say
I think I won 2 rounds this year so far.
I heard you went out on a blaze of glory in that one round that you won. What happened there?
Yeah, that was interesting. The old ornery cuss. The 440 that was in it, 30 over 440, trick flow heads, trick flow intake. Good, had good rods in it, stock steel crank. Rod bolt left loose, and it spontaneously and erratically disassembled itself on the racetrack. That was, without a doubt, the most catastrophic engine failure I've had. I actually got hit in the foot by a connecting rod. Bounced off the track, came up and bruised the bottom of my foot.
Wow.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm assuming it was a rod. Something hit me in the bottom of the foot, and that was the biggest piece. So,
it hit the floorboard that bad?
Yes, it hit it came out the left side, and it must have hit the track and bounced or something. But, yeah.
What RPM was that at?
Probably 6,000, I would guess.
So
somewhere like mid-second gear.
You've got a rod that weighs how much?
I don't really
ejecting itself out of a steel block, bouncing off the macadam at 100 and some mile an hour?
Yeah, probably 100 and couple.
And shooting straight back up into the bottom of your floor. Yeah, I would imagine. I'm surprised it didn't go through the floor.
Yeah, there really wasn't even any dents there. I looked, but I definitely got hit by something. But that was an interesting that was an interesting ride there because it instantly threw fluid out of the block onto the track and under the back tires, under the front tires. The rod came out of the front of the motor, so everything that came out was also hitting the front tires.
Yeah.
And my first instinct is I wanted to get off the track. With everything going under the front tire and a back tire, I couldn't do nothing. And with as hard as it decelled whenever it blew up, it went into a front end shake. And I couldn't I couldn't steer, and I tried hitting the brakes, and meanwhile the car's sideways. It immediately tried to turn the car. And it went through that little bit of a front end shake. I tried hitting the brakes a little bit. It just slid the tires, so that didn't work. So I just basically had to coast it out, and I didn't want to get off the track into the grass because I was still going probably 100 and couple.
Yeah.
And I didn't just want to bail it into the grass because there is a couple inch drop going into the grass, and whenever you're on 14.5-inch sleds and 4-inch wide front tires, it's not the best idea just to bail into the grass at that speed. But that was interesting. But I won that round. The other guy red lit.
So you won by default. You didn't win because you beat him.
Yeah, he won.
I didn't win by
Win's a win.
I didn't win by default. Whenever you're drag racing, you have a job, you got to cut a light and run a number, and I cut a light and I didn't red light. which, and he did. So like I did my job and I didn't red light. So I did win that one.
I was picking on you, man.
I just got to say that because it's like the only race I've won so far this year. So, yeah, I just say it that way to make myself feel good.
We're glad you're all right.
Oh, it was a ride.
Yeah, and then what happened? The week following, the car's back at the track.
Oh yeah. Again, it's not my car. I just drive it for somebody, and he had another motor ready to go for the car. All we had to do was swap it in.
What motor was that?
That is a 518 cubic inch big block Chrysler.
Is that a 440 base?
Yes, it is. That motor squeezed up. The car's only legal to run 10 flat.
In the quarter?
Yes. And with the better heads and the better intake on it, the car would more than likely run probably 940s. Right now, it will run 990s and bad air. With
As we saw the other weekend.
Yeah, being squeezed up a little bit.
So what else you been up to? I heard you got a new daily.
I did. It's not too many people's dream vehicles, but it was one of my dream vehicles as a kid whenever I realized they existed. Got a 3/4 ton Chevy Suburban, 99, OBS body style, 454. It's a pretty cool ride. I mean, there's what's not to love about it. You know, you put as many people as you want in it to go somewhere. You can fit all of your stuff in. And what you can't fit inside of it, you can hook a trailer to it and then pull all your other stuff. And then what doesn't fit inside or in the trailer, you can put on the big roof rack. There's nothing to not love about it.
Yeah.
But I went and got that, which was eventful all in itself. I had to make like an hour and a half trip to go and get this thing. I took the trailer down. It wasn't road ready whenever I bought it, as is like nothing that I buy. So I trailered it back with my dually, and my dually is a 77 C30, and that thing has just always been reliable. Never needed anything. I got it dirt cheap, fixed it, did what I needed to drive it, and it's just been a workhorse since then. Until that day. Went down. And there's some things that I did to it that weren't supposed to be permanent, and they ended up staying permanent, like the electric fuel pump that I just kind of zip tied to the frame. And it was fine whenever I had the other exhaust on it. I just had some hacked together exhaust that I made from stuff that was sitting around. Actually, they were ear mufflers that were sitting in the garage. I robbed them and put them on. Well, I had actual exhaust made for it. Took it to a local guy that does really nice work, and that exhaust must make more heat, and it sits a little closer to the frame, and just a radiant heat from the exhaust cooked my fuel pump. Which all of my square bodies I've put electric pumps on, and just because they're easy to replace on the fly, and I've had to do all I've basically ever dailied with square bodies. So I've learned to keep like an ignition module and an electric fuel pump spare. So I'm like an hour from home, and me and a friend of mine end up putting in this electric fuel pump after it died along the side of the highway. Which it was like a $12 Amazon fuel pump as it was. So like the one that I had in the glove box as a spare was the cheap one. So we put that on, and it leaked all over the place, and it wouldn't pick up fuel because it was leaking so bad, and we ended up pulling that apart, and because I tried this little filter, and it just leaked fuel out of every crevice of that filter. So it shouldn't have taken as long as it did, but we ended up getting her back. That was a little bit of a roadkill trip.
Let's say you guys broke down like 3 times, didn't you?
Yeah, all for the same thing. And I wish I could say it was just parts failure, but it's just because I had the fuel pump in that spot, and it shouldn't be there. Like, it was all my fault. But there's no other way to say.
Nothing better than knowing why your car's breaking. Because like when it breaks, you're like, oh, I know what that was. There's no guessing. It's just like, yeah, okay, we're going to sit for 40 minutes, and then we'll be fine for another hour.
Yeah, it's fine as long as you keep moving, and it's like blowing the exhaust heat away. But I was in like city Lebanon.
Oh,
pulling
okay.
this thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm in like all these traffic lights, and it's just sitting there, like making heat, like it's radiating up through the floor, and I'm like, oh, God, this sucks. I don't have air conditioning, and I mean, if it was hot in the cab, it's hot everywhere else, and it's just like boiling the fuel out of my fuel pump.
Well, I'd say you got a pretty good vehicle out of that whole debacle, though. Like, that Suburban is probably, for the money you paid for it, that was a damn good buy.
Yeah, you can't really beat it. I mean, the thing only has 120,000 on it.
Yeah.
It came with 4 brand new tires. It's a big block. I think I also have a problem with that because 2 out of my 3 dailies are big blocks, and the other one is a 355.
At least that one's fuel injected. Doesn't work right, but it's fuel injected.
What doesn't?
Your
Which
Camaro.
one? Oh, it works fine. It's just not tuned.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it don't work as good as it could.
Yeah. The Suburban's fuel injected too.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a 99.
I'm an idiot, everybody. That's me. So Tyler, what you been up to?
Nothing, dude. I got my block back from the machine shop. We had a miscommunication and it didn't get decked. So I brought it back, got it decked, and it looked great.
Yeah?
Yeah, Garen did a great job. I got it decked by a guy, Don, near my house. He did a good job, too.
Cool.
I didn't feel like going all the way back out to Garen's.
Yeah. Sorry, Garen. If you're listening to this, sorry, buddy.
Thanks, Garen. You're the man.
We love you anyways, but
sometimes time has a lot to do with where you go.
Time and distance.
Yeah,
it's race season. He's got to get that Elko done.
What else?
Fool's waiting to get gapped.
Yeah.
Just today, a lady I've been seeing just bought a 1990 BMW K75, a 3-cylinder, 750 shaft drive, fuel injected. Really cool bike. She let me ride it back from...
Oh, is it that red one you sent me a picture of? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I rode it back this morning.
That thing's sweet.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was really fun
that's
and
a sweet little bike.
Probably like, this is my first time ever riding like a touring bike like that. It's very comfy. Got heated hand grips and it's crazy.
That's the fancy stuff.
It's fast too. It has torque in every gear. I could accidentally end up at over 100 pretty easy. Just flying around.
Your Sportster will do that too.
Yeah, I know, but it would keep up with that for sure.
I'm sure it will. It's a lot of difference in weight there.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty much it. I've been working.
Yeah,
working a lot.
And Travis brought it up a little bit ago. Speaking of your Sportster, that went on a pretty long trip here.
Yeah. So just so everyone knows, from where we're at to Chincoteague and back is 500 miles, like ish. He rode a Sportster with ape hangers down there and back. No fairing, just Sportster with ape hangers down and back.
Mm-hmm.
We had to stop every 80 miles to get gas. Like on the way down, we were supposed to leave at we were figuring 11 o'clock in the evening. We were going to leave.
I get off at 10.
Yeah, he gets off at 10. Well, supposed to. And I get to his house early because I was ready to go. I got there at 9:30 or something. I sat around, hung out, drank a beer. And he shows up 10:30, and he was all wound up and pissed off because something happened, and he ended up having to stay late, and he was just running around, rushing him. Whoa, dude! I was like, calm down. We're about to ride motorcycles to Virginia to an island. I'm not leaving like this. Let's just calm down. So we hung out, we drank a beer, we bullshitted, we got the bikes ready to go. And next thing we know, it's 2:30. Mm-hmm. I was like, dude, we gotta go. And we're deadbeat tired at this point. I was rip raring ready to go when I got to his house. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. We'll get there early in the morning. By the time we left at I guess it was about 2 when we left, and then we stopped at Rutter's and got gas, and then we're like, well, we better eat because, got a long way to go. When in reality, we could have just ate at our first stop. So we left at about 2:30, got on the highway. And then we stopped. I think it was 60. The first 60 miles we stopped, which we didn't even get out of PA, and then we went a little bit farther, and then we were in Delaware, and went a little bit farther, still in Delaware, a little bit farther than Maryland, and we took the long way down there on our way down, and it took us like
The whole
almost
route was like 40 miles an hour the whole way.
yeah, which really sucked up the time. It took us like 7 or 8 hours to get down there. Because every time we stopped, we get gas. Well, he'd get gas. I get gas like every other one. He would get gas. I would get a drink. And like we're trying to stay awake because we're whooped at this point. We're drinking coffee. We're drinking Red Bulls. We're smoking cigarettes. Like we've never smoked them before. And it's the best thing ever. Like we're just like trying to stay awake. And then we hit like the Maryland area, and like we stopped at a gas station. We're like laying on the grass, and like he had to pee really bad, and the lady wouldn't open the door for him because it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. They didn't, or it was like 6:30, and they didn't open till 7 or something like that. And he was like, "She won't open the door."
It was like 6:54.
Oh yeah,
it was like 7.
Yeah, she was standing there going 7, 7, and he was like, "Just I gotta pee. Like I've gotta pee." He was so pissed off. But we finally got down there, and then it was cool, like, because right before you get to, like, the inlet to Chincoteague, you have to drive past a 7-mile air base, which is NASA. Like, NASA has an air base right outside of Chincoteague.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. And there's a bunch of other stupid shit that happened on the way down, like that one place we stopped where the aliens hang out.
Yeah.
We'll get into that another day, but we get into the inlet, and, you know, you can't go any more than 25 mile an hour anywhere in Chincoteague, which is fine if you're on mopeds. But like on Harleys, it kind of sucks because like first gear, you're like, second gear, like, and it's like bouncing and carrying it on. So it's like you got to find a happy medium. And if you speed in Chincoteague, there's no cops. I saw one cop there, and it was Sunday morning at like 7:30, and he was going out towards like the beach, like to the reservation. They've got, from what we were told and what I could see, every telephone pole has radar and a camera on it, like a radar detector and a camera. If you're doing any more than 25 mile an hour, they take a picture of your license plate and send you a damn bill. So we get there, we're putzing around, we're trying to figure out where we're going. We camped at an KOA, and we pull up there, and it's like 10:30, and check-in wasn't until what, 3? 4. And I was like, oh, dude, what are we gonna do for that many hours? Like, I was whooped. He's used to being up that late because Tyler used to tour all the time. He didn't care. He'd stay up 3 days straight, whatever. And I'm like dying. I was like, it's hot. I need something to eat. I gotta sleep, dude. I gotta sleep. It's been like 28 hours. I'm tired. So we go to the KOA, and he walks in there, and the lady gave him like a whole bunch of tood. And he was like, can we like check in early? And she's no. Well, when can we? Check-in's at 4. All right, so he came back out, and then we had to, like, we bounced around from restaurant to restaurant to restaurant to shopping center to restaurant to restaurant to restaurant until, like, we found somewhere to sit, and it was, like, 2 o'clock or something. I was like, dude, we got to go back and see if they'll let us camp out for a little bit.
They did.
They did. And we, well, while we were trying to find somewhere to, like, hang out to kill time, we ended up riding to the beach, and we had to pay $20. I paid $20 for us to have like a day pass, or was it a day pass? Or
yeah, it's like
pass?
for a whole. It's like a wildlife refuge, and then the beaches on that.
Yeah,
on the
which is pretty
outside.
cool. It's super clean, but there's a bunch of people. So we're riding to the beach, and like I had to take a video of it because there was no way to like tell anybody how it looked. It was just cool to see. It was like some Easy Rider stuff, like big scenic area and 2 guys on Harleys riding down in between 2 parts of the ocean. Just it was cool. We got to the beach, and it's packed. And me and him are in all black. I got my jacket on. I got my pants on. He's wearing what he's wearing now. And everyone's just staring at us. It's like 100 degrees out. And they're like, look at these dumbasses. We're riding our Harleys on the beach. And like where everyone parks, it was paved with broken up seashells. And like I didn't notice it until I tried to put my kickstand down and the bike started to sink. I was like, what the hell? It was a bunch of busted up seashells that they rolled into the sand. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that actually is pretty neat.
Yeah.
It
So
really made me feel the lobes of that cam and that bike. I could barely go in first gear. It was like, it was crazy.
Yeah, your little sporty's cammed up pretty hard. So anyways, we go to the beach. He like runs in. He like rips his clothes off. He runs in and he jumps in the water.
Getting in there.
And I was like, I'm just gonna walk in it because I don't feel like having wet jeans to ride back. And we didn't know how long we were gonna be stuck out until we could go back to the campsite. Anyways, we go back to campsite. They let us check in early. He was like, listen, we rode our bikes down here. We've got nowhere else to go. We've got no shade.
We saw the whole town.
Yeah, like we literally rode all over this island. Please, can we just set up our camp? Like we're tenting. It's not like we had a camper. We didn't have a toter home. And like the camp section was empty. Let us in. So they did. We go over there and set up. And set up the tent, and he brought a hammock, and I ended up sleeping in the hammock. Homeboy here passed out on the ground on a yoga mat. And it's like, I think it was like 4 o'clock or so, or no, it was like 3 o'clock. We slept for 2 hours. 2 hours. And when we sat up and fell asleep, there was no one around us. We woke up, we were in the hood. We were in the hood. And it was weird because like I woke up and I'm like cocooned in this hammock, and I just heard like trap music playing. And I was like, what the hell? And I stuck my head up out, and I was like, oh my God. Because there was no one there. Like, there was not a soul within, 40 yards each direction of us. There's just nobody. We woke up, they're everywhere. There's just so many people everywhere. There's cars everywhere. It smelled like pot everywhere.
It was check-in for the weekend.
Oh,
Everybody
yeah.
showed up. It was
And,
immediately like kids were like, cool bikes.
Yeah, like I woke
They're
up.
like, you
there's
guys
just,
hungry?
Yeah, and they're like, hey, you guys hungry? And we're like, yeah, but we got to go to the beach before they close it. And like that was our biggest thing. We wanted to get to the beach before it was like too late. So like we're like rushing around putting our pants and stuff on or putting our shorts on, and we're getting ready to like we chucked everything in the tent because it was just a mess. And the one lady who was cooking, she was like, "Oh, you I'm sorry. You don't have to leave." And we're like, "What are you talking about? What are you sorry for?" She's like, "Well, we don't want to run you off." No, you're fine. You're not running us off. We're going to the beach. We'll be back. She's like, "Oh, okay. You sure you don't want nothing to eat?" And I was like, man, I know I want whatever she's cooking because it smells damn good.
It was cool.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah, they were real cool. Yeah, we went out to the beach, hung out for a while, and
Rode right back.
yeah, we rode right back. I think we were out there 3 hours or so, and rode back, and
Rode back the next day.
yeah. Yep, rode back the next day. And the ride back was definitely interesting because I had my phone on a suction cup thing for a windshield to hold your phone, and I had it like suction cup to my tank, and it worked out really good. And I was just looking at that for directions, and we took a quicker way home, which so we thought anyways.
It never is.
No. And we got to the Bay Bridge over the Chesapeake, and we hit traffic. I'm not really scared of bridges, but when you're on a Harley in the right lane right up against, I don't know if you've been over the Bay Bridge.
Yeah.
There's there's just a crappy guardrail. There's no barrier. There's a crappy guardrail and a crack about this wide between the guardrail and like the road. So like we're putting along, and I'm just like staring down through the crack, and the farther we go up, the farther away the water gets. I'm like, man, this sucks. And then like as cars are going by and stuff, you can feel the bridge going like this, and we're on bikes, so you feel all the elements, the wind blowing through. Like it was weird. And we were on that bridge for like 35, 40 minutes, just like up. I'm like, man, dude, these bikes are gonna blow up because we just weren't moving. So we got off the bridge, and then like things started to pick up a little bit. He needed gas, so we pulled off at some like sketchy little 7-Eleven outside of Baltimore, and I texted Aaron. I said, hey, we're about an hour and a half away. Like, that's what it's telling me. And then as soon as I sent that, boom, phone died. I was like, all right, well, he had this phone charger thing that was, it had solar panels on it. And like it would charge that way, or could charge that way. Well, we had been using it, the whole weekend. So I was like, oh, I'll just plug my phone in, no big deal. It would turn it on just enough for it to shut back off. And I'm like, shit. I'm like, how are we gonna, and his phone was almost dead. I'm like, well, one of our phones has to stay on in case something happens. So like he got on his phone and we like memorized what roads we had to take, but like he didn't write, and he wrote them down on his arm, but he didn't write like which direction of the road we had to take. So we had to guess.
Oh, like north south.
Yeah.
Like,
And I was like, listen, if we go east on any of them, like we're going to end up in New York or like Jersey or something. So let's not go that way, either west or north. And we figured it out, but it was.
Once we got to the airport, I'd driven back from Baltimore Airport a million times.
Yeah,
it was like a 80-mile-an-hour rush hour.
Yeah, dude, it was crazy.
It was nuts
because I don't drive down there. I try to stay away from the cities as much as possible, but like that inner loop, we were doing the speed limit. And like everybody was screaming by us. I'm like, dude, we're going to get run over. So he starts picking up the speed. I pick up the speed. Next thing you know, we're doing like 80, 85
like
just
weaving.
to keep up with traffic. So
It was fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. But yeah, that was.
We hit PA and just did a solid 85 up 83 the whole way home.
Yep. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I would definitely do that again. That was maybe a little closer next time. But,
Yeah.
Definitely not too bad.
just riding a motorcycle to water is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter what water it is.
No.
I used to ride my bike to like the river all the time and just like sit on my bike and look at the river. It looks different whenever you're on a motorcycle
Yeah.
for some reason. So it seems.
You should do it driving over the ocean. It's pretty cool.
I can imagine.
Like
I rode to Colonel Denning's.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Out in, that's Newville.
Yeah, it's Newville. Out to the lake a bunch of times.
But yeah, so I think, did you have your El Camino on our last show? Or
Yeah.
I think he got it like the day before. 'Cause
Okay.
it was here.
Yeah, that's right. It was here.
Because we had that whole discussion on why I don't like him.
Yeah.
And why I do like his.
Yeah. Do you like mine?
No, it's got a V8.
It don't have nothing in it now.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
It's empty.
I like yours. It's the Twisted Sister, man.
Yeah, the Twisted Sister.
Yeah, it's whenever you're in them, they're cool.
You
You got to take mine for a drive today.
oh, dude,
Yeah.
his is mint. That's like driving a new
Whenever
car.
you're sitting in them, they feel cool. I still don't like the way they look.
Yeah.
His just has that cool vibe to it because it's a 6-cylinder, and
Yeah. So like,
that car I can just picture taking so much abuse and just never quitting.
well, our backup plan to go on a Chincoteague was like, we were going to take his El Camino down. That was like the backup, like a tentative plan. Like if we didn't feel like riding the bikes down or like it was going to rain or something, I was like, dude, let's just take the Elko down. And I had every bit of faith in that car because I drove it before we left. I was like, dude, this thing will go anywhere you want it to. You can drive this across the country, into the water. It'll come right back out.
Yeah, and it's a 6-cylinder, so it's
Yeah.
not going to make you broke. I drove my Dolly to Maryland here not too long ago. It was like 8 miles from Maryland. It might as well have been Maryland. But that was pretty cool. It was just expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a carbureted big block Dolly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I talked about it a little bit about doing it, but on our last show. But I got my El Camino finally. It was probably, I think, maybe a week or two after we did the last show that I had got it, and we ripped the motor out of it and the training and stuff, and so I sent the motor back to the guy I got the car from. So I got that. Dwight and I started putting a cage in the Chevelle yesterday.
Yeah, that was yesterday.
Yeah. And we hold on. One second.
Yeah, there's
please.
a whole lot of things that just happened here. My phone, oh, that's my wife. Let's see. Yes.
I'm just making sure we're still going here. Yep, we're still going. We're good. Yeah, there's been a bunch of stuff that's been going on between Dwight racing, Tyler just working, and being occupied with his significant other, which is Jeez. Congratulations.
Hey, thanks.
Good job.
Yeah, good job, man.
That's seemed easier than whatever you were trying to say.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
You did the same thing yesterday too. You tried to say something and it came out. I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't anywhere
I hit
close
the
to.
two-step and I just started pop.
How long are we running here?
We're only 35 minutes in.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I'll bring this up. The other thing that we did last weekend, It was me and Travis, my mom, her boyfriend, Travis's girlfriend, Aaron. We all jumped in my Suburban and took a trip to Maple Grove Raceway for the Street Outlaws No Prep Kings race. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, 110% recommend doing. That was such a cool experience. Now,
Yeah, and I've been to a lot of national events and stuff, but like the atmosphere is a lot different with a no prep race than what it is a national event race, because the people that do the no prep stuff, they're just
they're
they
one of
don't-
us.
yes, they don't have nearly as many faces to impress.
Yeah,
as far as
there's
sponsors and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Now they have sponsors, but they all know what they're about.
Yep.
And that's probably why they give them the money that they do. What sponsors they do have.
Yeah, it's definitely more laid back, I would say.
It is. And compared to the national event races, you can walk right up and like look in the windows of the cars and stuff. You can't get close to the cars at a national event race.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool because they have like their pits and stuff set up like against their trailers, and then like where the awning comes out and stops, it's just essentially big enough for it to be out past the car enough for guys to walk around it, and then they just put like a little rope barrier up around like the perimeter of that awning. That's it. Like you can literally walk to that little like rope and just stare at the car. Like you can look at the welds on the car. That's how close you are to them.
Yeah, I mean you can walk right up to. I mean,
Like
I
don't
guess-
don't
I
be
guess-
don't be ignorant and be in everyone's business while they're trying to
don't
work
put,
on the
like,
car. But
put like fingerprints on the car or anything.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I guess if you like wanted to be that kind of person, I guess you could like smear your grimy fingerprints on the car.
that's a good
Until
way
you
to
got yelled at.
Yeah,
but-
that's a good way to get hollered at.
yeah. But like
or
that's how
worse.
close you can get. Like you can walk right up, look at the stuff.
Yeah, and like it was cool because like general admission got you into the pits too. Like it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It said
The
like every
tickets are-
tickets is a pit.
I wish I
pass.
could have made it.
Tickets
Yeah,
were
you messed up.
$30.
Yeah, it was worth it. And you know if you spend enough time going to like events in general, you kind of get to figure out like if you want to meet people that you look up to that you see on TV, and they say don't meet your heroes. That may be true for rock stars and stuff, but when it comes to most
Car people?
most car people, most of them, not all, most of them are exactly who you'd think they are, and they're awesome. They're
And I
awesome.
think we actually brought that up on the last podcast, and like how more down to earth car people tend to be, just because they have that same interest.
Yeah.
and cars have a way of mellowing you. I think.
Yeah, but like if you spend enough time like doing stuff like that and going to those kinds of deals, you kind of get an idea if you want to run into somebody and talk, like have a legitimate conversation and not stand in a line for 40 minutes to say, hi, how are you? Hey, I'm a big fan. Can you sign my shirt or my hat? Walk around the pits. If there's races happening that you're not super into, go walk into the pits. Guarantee you're going to run into somebody that you want to meet without having to stand in line. I talked to Murder Nova that way. I saw Jeff Lutz that way. I talked to Ryan Martin for a little bit that way. Like I was standing shoulder to shoulder with him. He bumped into me because he didn't realize how close he was getting to me. He was reaching inside his merch trailer to hand his son some juice boxes or something. I was standing there talking to his wife. And he's like, oh, hey. I was like, hey, whoa, sorry, dude. I was like, I'll get out of your way. Like, you're a busy guy. And he was like, oh, no, you're good, man. I appreciate the support. And I was like, hey, good luck. And he was like, thanks, man. He went out. He won that event. He won that event. He won it. He won both of them. Both things he was doing, cleaned house. Because I
Yeah.
said good luck.
He has that new car that he built, the gray car, the nameless car, and he has the Fireball, which was his first one, and a new gray car, and he ran Outlaw No Prep with the Outlaw Big Tire with the red car, and the Invitational with the gray car, and he won both classes.
Wow.
Yeah, he if you watch Street Outlaws and you're like a fan of it and you religiously watch it, or if you just watch it sometimes, if you get the chance to go watch them at an event, no prep or prep track, I don't care. You need to go see how fast those cars really are in person. It was mind-blowing. That TV show don't do it any justice. Now, granted, most of the time they're on the street when you're watching it, and yeah, they're probably a little bit slower, but those
They're
cars...
still running fours on the street. 8
those
miles.
cars are so fast. It blew my mind. Like I've seen top fuel cars go. I've seen jet cars go, but like you see quote unquote street car, you know what I mean? Now, granted, they got a lot of horsepower, but you see one of those cars that you've been watching on TV fly by you at almost 200 mile an hour in an 1/8 mile. Mind blowing. And for how loud they are, holy hell.
You need to go down for a national event to see the top fuel cars because they're even crazier to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. They blur your vision.
Yep. Yeah. But definitely, I will definitely do that again. That was a really good time. I had a lot of fun with that. Even if it was an all day thing where there was no shade and it was hot and disgusting by the end of it, it was really cool. And it was even cooler to see a couple guys from our home track, Beaver Springs, be there, and one of them win their class. That was really cool. Bill Marks won. He won, right?
Yeah, he won.
Yeah.
He won what's called the Future Outlaws class.
Future Outlaws class, that's what it is. I was talking to Joey about that earlier today. I couldn't remember what that class was called. But that was...
that's basically the class where you make your name and stuff.
Yeah, try to get seen. Try to run with those guys. We'll get Tyler in there with his El Camino. Yep. Kamikaze was cool to talk to. Yeah, he was a cool dude. But anyways...
Yeah, they were all pretty laid back.
Yeah. So that's what we've been up to. Some of us are super busy, others not so much, but or at least with cool things anyways. Dwight's about the coolest one here.
I'm probably the busiest one. Yeah. I doubt about cool, but I would definitely say probably the busiest.
Well, I think you're cool. It's the only reason I hang out with you. You make me seem cooler.
Oh, okay. As long as you do, I get lonely if somebody hangs out with me.
Oh, man. So, anything else we want to talk about before we dive into this thing?
I don't really think. I think we should probably get started on this.
All right. We got some stuff to do here. It's 3:00. We got
all right. So there lies another problem.
Yeah. I mean, we can just dive right into this. So
yeah, this comes into the learning the podcast deal. We kind of forced this into today, and this was the time that we had the moment where we had the most time to do it.
Yeah,
we still don't have time to do this.
Yeah. So it's Aaron's birthday. So I want to say
his girlfriend.
Yeah, a big happy birthday to Erin. Happy 30th. R.I.P. to your youth. And by the time you hear this, your birthday will be past. So, haha, gotcha, because we're throwing a surprise party. She thinks she's coming home to have to set up to a party that everyone's going to be here at 6:30, 7 o'clock. But in reality, everyone's going to be here in about an hour.
It's going to be good.
The whole day got shot to shit because it just, I got tied into going to pick up a lawnmower for somebody and it just didn't go well. So, anyways.
This whole weekend's been chaos.
Yeah. So, all right. So, on to our performance perception. David Vizard's Max Performance Small Block Chevy on a budget.
And we're only doing one small section out of this book because, truth be told, it is a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And to be able to actually sit down and reiterate what's in this book, this entire book, I don't think any of us could do it because that's just too much talking. It really is.
It would start to sound like an NPR show at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're just we're gonna break this book up, and the next couple books aren't gonna be this one, or we might just bring this book up in other conversation.
Yeah, I don't think we should retire this book by any means. I think we should just come back to it here and there. Yeah. I think the next thing I want to do is something about chassis.
This book is so informational that
it's almost annoying.
Even to people like us that do
people like Dwight.
Okay. Even to people like me that are really into this stuff, it's also boring. I'm sitting and reading this book and I'm like, oh man, this just it's so much.
All right.
But where are you starting? I was learning, so I didn't want to stop.
So, do you want to start with the valves or you start with the cam? Because you're talking about valvetrain.
I'm going to start with the first page in the chapter.
Oh, all right. That's
where we would start. I like that.
Yeah.
Camshaft and valvetrains.
Yes.
The basic 5. Chapter 7.
So this I saw your dad walk by earlier, and he was wearing cut-off jeans and cowboy boots. I just saw him through the blinds, and I've been chuckling about it the whole time since I've seen him.
Oh, that's what's been on your mind? That
yes.
you had to say?
Yeah, I don't know if you've caught me
I could see you wanting to say something, you just didn't.
Yeah, I had to because it's been occupying that space in my head, and I can't think about anything else.
All right, now
I
it's
just
out.
saw him walk past, all goofy looking. And he's like wearing cutoff jeans and cowboy boots. And I'm-
He's going to a Guns N' Roses concert. He's got to fit the part.
all right, so cams and valve trains. We're just pulling information out of this book, and we're just reiterating it the way we see it.
Yeah, let her rip.
And in this book, he starts it off just like a little bit of an intro, telling him about himself. Then after that, so this is a bad time to realize that I can't read and talk. This whole podcast might not be a good idea.
It's too late, man. I spent too much time setting this shit up.
All right, so he has the one paragraph in here. It's just titled as Basic 5. The words out of the book are: there are 5 parameters to be addressed when selecting a cam and valve train for best performance.
Yeah.
They are overlap, the lobe separation angle, advance and retard settings, lift, and duration.
Okay. What's that mean to people that don't know what you're talking about?
Well,
Do you need a bump? Do you need me to bump you so you can quit skipping?
I've just been dropped too many times, I guess, like a CD player.
Yeah, but those keep working.
They do. All right. The lobe separation angle or center line angle is what he has. It is basically the relation between the intake lobe and exhaust lobe on the cam and where they are in accordance to each other.
Okay.
There's actually there is a drawing in this book somewhere.
Hold her up to the camera.
I'm going to. As
I
soon
feel
as
like I should
find
just
it.
put it on a selfie stick. That way we can just hand it around. But that might
Alright,
be a
so
little
this-
easy.
I'm curious about things about this because when I'm building this engine and
Yeah, don't do what I did and just buy a cam and stuff it in the middle.
yeah,
It works.
I like to think
This
I
is
thought
basically
about it.
the front view of a camshaft.
Yeah.
If any of that means anything to you, hopefully you have a little bit of an idea of like how camshafts work.
Well, I can
to
tell you, some
understand
people
this.
don't.
Yes,
Some people don't. That listen to this. Thank you for listening.
Yes.
We appreciate your support.
And camshafts are something that are super technical. That's kind of why we did this for the first episode. Most of the time, the lobe center line angle is kind of a function of the duration of the cam and the lift.
Yeah.
Kind of. That's not always true, but it can be.
All right. So to try to maybe make this a little easier, what are some things that you learned out of this that you would want to say to somebody? Because we could spend literally the next 3 hours talking about what all of those things mean.
Yes,
the logo
yes, and that's going to be the difficult part with this book.
I figure hit some key points on it, like what
vacuum. And,
If
yeah,
if there's one thing, like one very very basic thing to pull from this,
Yeah.
is make sure your compression's right for your duration. If you don't have a lot of compression, go with lift.
Okay.
If you want a bigger cam in your car, you want more power. If you do not have the compression to put a big cam in, you would want more lift because he says it in I'm skipping over some things here now. Basically what will happen is whenever you carry a wide duration on a cam, you're going to end up with more valve overlap.
Okay.
And what that will basically do, and valve overlap is whenever you have the two lobes on the cam, and whenever the piston's coming up, there will be a time where both the intake and the exhaust valve is open. That's what is called valve overlap.
Right.
And that and that's actually truthfully what makes the rough idles. That's just a function of the valve overlap, which is sort of a function of the duration of the cam. What will happen is with both of those valves open, you're obvious, and that's going to be on the compression stroke when that's happening. You're not going to get that entire stroke worth of compression.
Oh, okay.
So at low RPM, you're losing vacuum because you're actually pushing that back up into the intake. So if you're going to run a very wide duration cam, this is just rule of thumb that you can get so far into depth with it, but very basic. If you're going to run a lot of duration, you should have good static compression. Because at that low RPM, if you don't have that force of it coming up and like the speed of the piston hitting or like compressing, you're not going to get a whole lot of cylinder pressure at low RPM. So you need that static compression to try to make the most that you can of it.
Okay.
What will eventually happen with that, it can run okay like that. Like you may not even notice, but you will have so much more potential down low for torque down low with more compression and a lot of duration than you would if you had, just stock pistons with a very wide duration cam.
I don't know anybody who's put a motor together like that. That would be me.
you just wanted a big cam.
I wanted a big cam
and
you know what, to the moon, good. And it worked.
But I will say this. Whenever we were talking about this, you said what you wanted and stuff. You were asking some questions. You also have a stick car with 456 gears in it.
Yeah, It's an 8th mile car.
You don't necessarily need that down low.
No, I just keep it revved up and dump the clutch.
Yeah, it's a stick car. You can rev it as high as you want, and it's a stick with 456s. It will. That car could have a stock motor in it, and it'll still move it down low.
I've never been scared riding that thing with no seat.
I took him for a ride with no seat, and a
wide open.
Wide open.
I was holding on to the bolt that holds the door cassette on there. I thought the engine was going to blow up right in my lap.
Oh man!
Yeah, but your car can pull through. Like it doesn't matter if it has much torque down low because with the setup that your car is on a street tire stock suspension, it's going to spin the tires.
Yeah.
So you might as well make the power where it's going to use it.
Yep.
And that's up high.
And that's where I like it. I like a lot of RPM.
Yeah. Which
it sounds.
It
cool.
works. It works out in that.
Yeah. For whatever reason, like just throwing a bunch of parts at that car, it's worked every time. Stock motor or not, like it. We put a dirt burner intake on it, big old single plane intake. It had the heads cut down, stuffed a stupid cam in it for what it was, and
for a stock bottom end motor, I mean it's a lot of cam.
Yeah, but it works.
But it revs.
Yeah,
that's where you want it.
It doesn't work. It revs.
Yeah. And that motor has this awesome feature of like, whenever you rev it, it has varying fuel. It has a varying air-fuel ratio because as it revs, it will actually blow so much air out of the valve covers. It'll just suck it right back in intake and it richens it up in case it's lean.
It does. It's got so much blow-by.
That motor does have awful blow-by.
I've seen worse, but that one's got a lot. It doesn't smoke kind of blow-by. It just has a lot of blow-by.
Yeah.
Like you stick your hand, you pull the valve cover breather off and stick your hand over the hole and it goes...
It'll blow the dipstick out.
Yeah. It does. Every time I hit like 6,000 RPM, poof, the dipstick comes right out.
It did when I was with you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we passed my dad while we were doing that whenever he was in the car, and I took him for a hell rip in it. And my dad was like, "Why is it smoking so bad?" I was like, "It's just oil burning on the header. It's fine."
Minor fire.
Everything's cool.
Yeah, everything is okay. It's all okay.
So, anyways, back to our camshafts.
Yeah. But I mean, that is an example of what should be kind of a wrong setup.
So, like, here's something. Here's a key point. Overlap kills vacuum.
Yes.
is one thing that's coming up here. It says overlap kills vacuum, and with the first motor we put together in Chevelle, that thing made a lot of vacuum. Like
that was 110 degree lobe separation.
Yep.
It's not like they were super tight. There wasn't a lot of duration.
Yep.
That was a very high vacuum setup.
Yeah.
It had a dual plane intake on it, so it was drawing pretty hard. It's not overcarbureted. I am 100% against overcarbureting.
Yeah.
Like almost everything that I ever put together, people ask me like, "Why don't you put a bigger carburetor on that?" And my answer is always because it doesn't need it.
Yeah, I see a lot. Like it's my first series build, and I see a lot of people just doing like things that they've seen other people do on the extreme end of stuff, like slapping crazy stuff together.
I got a stroker motor. I need a 1050 Dominator for it.
It's like,
Yeah,
no,
that's not the way any of that works. I'll just throw this in here. This isn't in this book. In case anybody just wants to know, you do not need a big carburetor for big cubic inches. What
Preach
the
it, brother.
CF
Preach
yes,
it.
and CFM does not.
Oh, we're getting wound up now.
CFM does not regulate the amount of fuel that goes into an engine. The jet does.
Dude,
just so we're clear.
You peaked. You peaked on the thing. It's so loud.
CFM is the amount of air. You could put the smallest carburetor you want on something. You can jet that thing up and still get the right amount of fuel. CFM is just the amount of air that carburetor will let through.
Yeah.
And CFM is a function of RPM and cubic inches.
What does CFM stand for the people that don't know?
cubic
flow. Feet. Yeah, cubic feet per minute or so. I don't even know what it is.
Pretty sure that's what it is.
I think that's what it is. You put me on the spot for that. And
got him.
Yes, you did. But either way, it's a function of cubic inch and RPM.
Yeah.
My 454, I have a 600 CFM carburetor on, and it is perfect.
How'd we get to talking about carburetors and talking about
Somebody
cams?
wound me up.
Yeah.
Somebody wound me up. I don't know who did. Somebody did. Somebody got me wound up.
That fireball went to his head.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone.
Yeah, it went to your head.
All right. But anyhow. And
talk about lobe separation for a little bit. Because like everybody wants.
What do you want to know?
So like everyone, for instance, everyone, and when I say everyone, I mean the people that want the chop, they want the lobe, they want the pup. That has lobe separation has a lot to do with that. Like 110 degrees will give you that describe or explain why lobe separation makes the idle change. Like instead of like for instance a towing cam, you get that bum 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 bum, or you know what my dead cylinder sounds like, bum 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 bum. Mm-hmm. But if you have like a race cam or you know a mild like performance cam, you get more of a choppy idle to it. Why is that, and what difference does it make?
What a lot of that has to do with is just the way the lobe separation angles work. A lot of people would think that like if these are your cam lobes, okay, you would think a bigger number would be a choppier idle, but it is not. That's actually moving these cam lobes apart this way. Whenever you're moving them together, you're creating that overlap, which is creating less vacuum. You're also just making the motor hit harder too.
Right.
Like whenever you're giving it more air and fuel, it kind of tends to like
pop a little harder.
Yeah, it tries to throw it a little harder. And you're also opening those valves a little sooner. It's such an off the wall way to say it, but because it doesn't make sense, but it might make sense to some people. You're almost throwing the correlation between the cam and the crank off whenever you move them so far.
Okay.
You're not at all because it's still firing at the same time, given the timing is set, the ignition timing is set the same. But it's just because of the amount of fuel going in, when the valves are opening and closing, when the exhaust valve is opening and closing is a big one in vacuum.
So, for people that don't care about how well it works, and they just want the chop, the lower the lobe separation number is, the more choppity chop you get.
Mm-hmm. There's I've seen some. I don't know anything about LS motors or anything like that, but there's Corvette cams and stuff with 124. And
now that's farther apart. So
yes,
that'll give you more of a tone
that is
cam
farther
sound.
apart.
Yeah.
And on stuff like that, fuel injected motors, you will tend to see more lobe separation.
Yeah.
Something that will give more vacuum, that will give the vacuum ports better function.
Yeah. So we talked about, briefly, we have talked about overlap. We have talked about lobe separation. What's duration? And this isn't verbatim out of the book, but a lot of this information's in this book. How we're perceiving it is just dumbed down. So so y'all can understand it. And because I'm still learning.
Yeah,
it is impossible to be able to answer these questions directly out of the book, because we would then be reading this entire chapter.
Yeah. So
it just can't
what's
be done.
duration?
So
it's just the amount of time the amount of degrees that it's open, and they write it down at 50 thousandths. So how many degrees does it open and close down to 50 thousandths?
So at the two big things that are going to be advertised with a cam are the cam lift and the cam duration.
Yep.
The cam lift is how far it is opening that valve.
Okay.
Duration is how long it's holding that valve open. So
you can get tricked too, because some advertise at 50.
Yeah, it'll say advertised,
at 0.
and then it'll have another
that you want to go at with 50.
Yeah,
because that affects your vacuum a lot too.
Yeah.
There's a magic number where you can start losing a lot of vacuum.
Because when I bought my cam, it said 292 duration, but it was actually 240 something, 240.
And that's a lot. Yeah.
okay, so I'm not an artist at all, but
a little closer. All right. We're working with an iPhone, people.
Yes.
Hate us if you want.
So, ideally, these two would be the exact same height, but I cannot draw, so they're not even close. But this would not be a lot of duration, this side here. This here would be an example of having more duration. You can kind of think of it as like a door.
A smaller door opens quicker.
No, but if just a door in the front of your house, if you walk through a door and you open it and shut it real quick, you can get through. If you open that door and hold it open, 3 or 4 people might be able to walk through.
And a bunch of flies.
Yes.
Here at my house.
So
we have a guest. Her name is Nicole.
Hi.
Hey, Nicole.
You're on camera. Wave.
Oh.
And this is exactly what I was talking about with that door. She just walked right on in
here.
So it's kind of ironic.
Put them in the fridge.
Okay. I'm gonna have to remove a bunch of crap.
We'll be out in a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, all that duration does, you could actually run a little bit less lift and more duration and end up with more air and fuel into the motor. A lot of that just depends on what kind of setup you're looking at, what kind of compression you have, what kind of RPM you're looking to run.
So, one last thing I want to talk about, because we could go all day on this. We could go a few days on this, I'm sure.
I just have some things highlighted that I wanted to read off.
I wanted to talk about lifters, or not lifters, rockers.
Okay.
Like rocker arms.
Yeah.
And that's what pushes the valve down. Because there's always that, well, do I go with roller tip, or do I go with full rollers, or do I go with some aftermarket stamped ones? You know what I mean? There's always that, what's going to work for my application. And I have, because I'm a cheap ass, on my Chevelle, on that motor, I have roller tips. Because
You don't have roller tips anymore, do you?
no, they're on there.
Didn't
I
you?
I reused them because there's nothing wrong with
I
them.
thought you bought a set of like good rockers.
No, I got a set of good
I
stud
did.
girdles.
Oh, okay.
I got crane cam stud girdles and crane cam stud girdles with Lunati poly locks.
Okay. For some reason I thought you had like full aluminum
No.
roller.
No. So I got some stamped steel. They're actually the ones in the book here. They're Comps Magnum rockers, and they're just a roller tip. So like there's less friction on the end of the rocker arm, and it lets it flow a little bit easier, and you have a little less parasitic drain. Now, if you have full rollers, you've got a whole lot less parasitic drain, and the engine tends to run a little bit smoother, and there's less wear on everything.
I was kind
and
of
it's
doing
one-
that as an experiment with mine, is roller everything.
Yeah.
I got some affordable Speedmaster full roller.
Oh, nice.
And one thing that he actually touched on in this book was one thing that you will gain from a roller is you get less side load on the valve stem
Right.
on the valve guide. Because with a regular stamped steel rocker that doesn't have a roller on it, it will actually tend to push like out on the valve
Yeah.
as it's trying to push it down.
Which can be huge.
All right, Dwight, give us your highlighted things, and we'll wrap this up.
Okay, here, I might read some things that we already talked about here, but these are just things I had highlighted in my book here. This is like a definition. It says overlap, which we talked about, is the time around TDC, top dead center, when both the intake and exhaust valves are open, and it's a function of both duration and lobe centerline angle.
Okay.
You'll hear it called scavenging too. Like
Yeah.
in diesel oil, I guess.
I can't wait to
Two-stroke
get into
oil, they
like
call it.
exhaust talk.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people hate exhaust because they just don't want to deal with it because there's just a bunch of clearance issues most of the time. But like, I love it.
For as caveman as I am, like as much as I like, carburetors and small block Chevys and big block Chevys and all of that, I hate open headers.
I'm not a big fan of open headers unless it's like 180-degree headers on like a GT40 or something. Because like even then, it's not really open header because they have like that little length of pipe behind it that all the tubes go into. But
Yeah, we can talk about that just in time to get mine figured out.
Yeah.
Unit cost.
The one thing I have here, it was discussing dynamic compression and static compression. Dynamic compression is actually the real compression that your engine has once both valves are completely closed. The compression that you can figure out like through math with the stroke and the bore size and the head gasket thickness and all of that truthfully doesn't matter. It's a good idea, but
gives you a ballpark.
yeah, if you're building a motor that's like with, I will say mine, because mine would be a good example of it. I might very close be able to run 93 in my truck.
Yeah. His C10 people.
What is the ratio on that?
That should be 11 and a half ish
Okay, yeah.
since I put the flat tops in it. Because the block's stacked a little and the heads are decked and just,
I'm looking at 10 and a half, hopefully.
but it's also iron head, so I'd have to be careful with that. But anyhow, the dynamic compression is just your actual compression ratio once both valves are closed.
Like there's no way for any air to go anywhere other than to explode.
yes.
Okay.
Because you could have, say your compression ratio could be 11 and a half to 1 or something like that. And your dynamic compression might say otherwise for the amount
With
of
your
timing you're
overlap,
on.
yeah.
Which it should be less than that, truthfully. Because you're going to be losing some of it.
Yeah.
And that brought about detonation, and I just thought it was worth mentioning. It says detonation is brought about by a combination of time, heat, and pressure. For most engines, detonation occurs at low RPM and high load because of the greater length of time that the end gases are exposed to the advancing flame front.
So in layman's terms, what's that mean?
Cylinder's building a lot of heat, and it's firing the fuel,
Before it should.
yeah, without the spark plug.
Yep.
It's like a diesel.
Yeah. So like, you get that with running
Too low of an octane of fuel.
crappy
And you
gas.
can still get that in a diesel. You
Yeah.
can get bad detonation.
Yeah. Too much timing, too low octane fuel, bad combination.
Lots of boost and shitty fuel.
Yeah.
What else? Anything else?
I think it might be worth. Or go ahead.
There's something in here, dual pattern cams.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing.
I will read this straight out of the book. It says this is desirable because of the reduced time period within which the exhaust must be expelled. Typically, you will see the exhaust side having either more lift or more duration of something of that sort. It will try to let more out than the intake side. That's giving the cylinder more time to blow down to completely release all of those old gases. Because if you're trying to empty that cylinder out of all the gas, which that sort of ties into exhaust too, you can get into exhaust scavenging where it'll actually suck it out of the cylinder. Which there's all kinds of science involved with that.
Yeah.
You know, more time than we have to explain all that. But what they're trying to do is get all of those exhaust gases out. Because if you're bringing in all that fresh stuff, you have that cool air and the fuel and, you know, all that horsepower already just fall in there. You don't want that old, you don't want that old gas, the gases from that.
To get caught up in that mess.
Yeah, to get caught up in.
What I gathered, like for an amateur engine builder, it's like if you're gonna have more of a stock head, like the dual pattern cams, kind of compensate for that.
Yes,
you'll be safer to have a single plane, or it'll be more safe to go with a single plane if you have really nice heads.
Yes,
I've got great heads.
And what I also highlighted that down, like that same statement that he made. And that just shows we are bringing this out of the book because that's something that was in this book.
I went with a single pattern.
Yes.
Because I decided to go with those AFR enforcer heads.
Yeah. It says cam designers anticipated their use in engines with standard or inadequate exhaust ports and systems. So typically a stock casting head isn't that great of an exhaust design. So if you're using a stock head, they want you to get all those exhaust gases out because it may be fine with a stock cam, which it's all designed around. Once you start putting more in, then it just can't keep up. The exhaust ports might not be able to keep up with what you're putting in. So, you know, the easy fix to that is more lift, more duration on the exhaust side, get all of it out of there.
There's like an option for every scenario you could be in.
There really is. There's like
to get a lot of power still.
There's so many pages in here
on cams.
Yeah, there's so many pages in here that has just different combinations for different setups and why you would use them and stuff like that. And
the bottom line is it's super important to look at all these things.
Yeah,
really,
like if you're gonna get a camshaft, like if you're paying to have your motor done and you're building something, you want performance or you want more bottom end, really pay attention to your camshaft and pick your camshaft because of like the usage, not because somebody told you to.
Or just somebody has the same one or something. It's like a primitive computer sort of for your engine.
Knowledge is power. So like if you know, the more you know about your motor, the more educated you can make your purchases, your picks of parts and stuff. And the camshaft makes a huge difference and stuff. And if you like the chop, like that's all you need sometimes. That's all I needed.
Yeah, I'm trying to have some of that. Lucky. I want low end torque and I want a vacuum. So I did something sort of modest. Big
cam and really low rear gear.
Yeah,
the torque and the RPM. So
and what you could do for that scenario is not a lot of duration in the cam.
I did
a lot of lift.
224 at 50 thousandths, 525 lift.
Yeah.
So it's like pretty mild, but it should sound pretty nice.
Yeah, and you could even step that up with like 1.6 rockers or something. I didn't think you would need to because 525 lift on 1.5 rockers.
It's gonna be
that's enough
for what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's enough. And there's a section in here for springs. It says the first rule is to minimize the amount of spring force needed to achieve desired RPM. Basically, you want that valve to close in time. You don't want valve bounce, which is basically exactly what it's called. When that valve closes, you don't want it to like kind of rattle. I'll say that. And there is something in here that I noticed, or like that I read that I didn't really ever think about. It's the weight of a spring. And this is why I read these books.
You mean in poundage or the actual physical weight?
Like the physical weight of the spring. Because the heavier a spring is, the less effective it becomes. Because it also has to fight its own weight.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And like whenever it's moving that fast, just like, I'll say G-forces. I'm sure there's another term for it, but like the G-force of that spring, it just intensifies how that spring functions.
Yeah.
Like if it's using its force to like fight its own weight.
An object in motion stays in motion type thing.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as effective. And that's where the beehive springs came in. And I learned a little bit about these too. And it says the beehive form produced a spring with far less clear-cut resonant frequency, and more of the spring's delivered force is used to control the valve train instead of its own mass.
That's
so
important.
it's not fighting itself.
Yes.
It can do its job without.
And basically, the
itself.
spring isn't necessarily carrying, because it doesn't have to be as stiff, because it's not as heavy. It's not carrying as much vibration through the valve train, which will create wear, and vibration in the valve train creates instability, and instability takes power.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never even thought about resonant frequency too. Like everything has a frequency that it is affected the most. Like this glass.
Yeah.
You play a certain note on a piano, it would rattle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never even thought about that. And
Yeah,
an engine
come on,
is
man,
so
you're the music
important.
guy.
Yeah, it's so important, dude. That's crazy.
All right. What, you got two more?
It's like at 4,000 RPM, all your valves could start rattling like all crazy.
Yeah. What are we doing on time here? It's not going to end up too long, is it?
We're an hour and 18, but we're like running out of time as to what we got to do next.
Okay, so we'll just cut this short here. The rest of this stuff is basically just definitions of stuff. Talking about hydraulic lifters, which is a solid lifter. All it is like a spacer, basically, between the cam and the push rod, in layman's terms. A hydraulic lifter has oil in the lifter itself, and it's a cushion to take up the lash on the cam. There's a definition of lifter pump up, and that is when lifter pump up occurs, directly out of the book. When lifter pump up occurs, it's because the lifter is doing exactly what it was designed to do, namely take up excessive valve train clearance. This in turn may cause it to unseat from the tappet under high RPM, and this separation looks exactly the same as unwanted lash. The lifter responds by increasing in length, meaning the center of it will fill up with more oil. It'll increase in length. Unfortunately, the lifter can get longer a lot quicker than it can shorten. It can't get rid of that oil quick enough, and the added length will actually hold the valves off of the seats, so you lose compression.
Bind up, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll just hang the valves open. That's what happens when lifters pump up. There's nothing super complicated with that. There's not a lot to get into with it.
Yeah, it's essentially a cylinder, the steel cylinder that's like just, the size of a quarter maybe. And
I didn't even think we should have brought some parts in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have
We'll have to do that next time. We apologize. Next time we will bring some parts in and shove it in the face of that camera so you know what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah, so you don't have to look
You
at
could do a whole
drawings.
nother one on cams.
So you don't have to look at poor
Picasso
drawings
over
like
here.
that.
Yeah, Picasso.
Yeah, we could do a whole
Is that
nother
abstract?
one on cams.
Or is that realism?
That's awefulism is what it is. That looks like you could take that right off that paper and put it on the front of like Frosty the Snowman. Thing looks like a
Yeah, you can cut them out and make a character out of that.
yeah.
So,
One other thing in here that I saw, there's a night riding service with Comp, which is cool. That's just a hardening surface on the face of the cam that keep the cams from wearing out any quicker.
Yeah, make it last a little longer.
Whenever you first fire up a motor with a new cam in it, you have to run them at a certain RPM to make sure that cam gets hot right away because that hardens the cam. Otherwise, you run the risk of grinding the cam lobes right off of the new cam.
Yep. Yeah. Like, so rule of thumb, unless you're Dwight,
I do it my own way.
yeah, and it works. I've done it your way, and it works, and it's way more fun. So,
No,
like,
I told you to do that.
you said go out there and beat the hell out of it like you're gonna drive it to break the cam in. That's what you told me. I said, all right.
Okay, I didn't think you were exactly going to do that, but you did it. But it does the same thing. It got the car hot. Like it doesn't.
It did.
As long as it gets it hot, basically, it doesn't much matter. The load probably wasn't good on it, but
Hey man, that cam's still good. That motor got torched, and that cam is still okay.
yeah.
But like rule of thumb to break a cam in is you run it at varying between 2,000 and 2,500 RPM for about 20 minutes. You just keep that RPM there and you vary it back and forth. You run it for 2,000 RPM for 5-10 minutes, and then you run it at 2,500 for maybe 5 minutes, and then back down to 2,000 for the other remaining time, and then shut her down. And at that point, like, while it's doing that, check for leaks and stuff and, do whatever. But after that 20 minutes, you should be able to wing that thing over and it not run the cam lobe off.
Yeah,
now,
you can
Dwight,
drive it like you stole it
the
after
first
that.
motor that we put together for my Chevelle, which we just put heads and cam and intake on it and a carburetor. Nothing crazy. But we had to break the cam in, and I was like, oh, yeah, we got to get the RPMs up. And I was, like, breaking it in for a little bit. And
In
he
my
was like,
defense, I told you it's about heat. As long as it gets hot, it doesn't matter. And, like, before I realized that you're actually doing what I was saying, you were doing a burnout out in front of the house on a brand new cam.
He told me, he said, this is how my dad used to do it, and this is how I've always done it. We just go out and run the car like we're going to drive it, and then, for about 20 minutes, and then, the cam's broken. I was like, well, if that's what you do, the hell with it, I'll try it. I fired that car up. I went down to the bottom of his driveway, got on the road, and straight to rev limiter, dropped the clutch, and just smoked the tires on that thing for 20 minutes, just as much as I could. And it worked. It worked really well.
It did. That isn't the way I do it, just for clarification.
You were lying to me.
I absolutely was.
Hims was lying to me.
I absolutely was. I break mine in, but not for the same amount of time that they say. Like, I'll run mine for basically till it gets hot. I'll run it a little bit after it gets hot, change the oil, and then I drive it like that.
Okay. All right. Well.
But anyhow, the hardening surface on the cam, that is a thing.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
I don't think
it's
I
a
know.
pretty nifty thing. Another thing I have highlighted here, for as many engine parts and things I have dealt with and seen, not that like I'm a professional engine builder, I just break a lot of things.
Shelly Racing engines.
I have never realized they have self-aligning rockers. Like, you know how on my motor I have to run the guide plates, and I have to move the guide plates back and forth to make sure I get the right patch on the valve tip.
Yep.
These rockers here, I've never seen this before. There's like little washers on each side of the roller, and it just aligns it on the tip of the valve, and you don't need to run guide plates.
That would make me afraid it's going to knock the keepers out.
Yeah, something.
All right, well.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be it for this show.
Still a little long-winded.
Yeah.
But it's all right.
Definitely,
all right.
at least it's not 2 hours. So for those that you were like, guys, it's too long. Sorry about you.
We should consider valvetrains part 2 and bring parts in.
Yeah, I think we should go over some more stuff. But
we'll eventually touch on
this is a good testament to like what we're trying to do with this, and this one is definitely probably not as entertaining as the first one was, because we were like half lit and having a good time. And not that we weren't having a good time here, but this was more informational than the last one was. So hopefully it's not too boring. We're gonna definitely like change it up. We're gonna get some I'm hoping this next one we can get a guest in and just have a good time.
That'd be cool.
It's always fun to hear stories. So hopefully y'all could take
and whoever
away.
the guest is could like chime in their little tidbits of information too.
Yeah, and hopefully y'all could get a little bit of information out of what we spit out. That's the whole goal here, is to take.
This book is incredible.
Yeah, like we're trying to take information from these kinds of books that are really hard to understand for Joe Schmo and try to get it out there so people kind of understand. Even if you just get like one thing out of all of it, that's a win for us. At least for me. I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah, I'm the guinea pig. I'm building a stroker with this book and YouTube and my dad. As a references, that's it, and the internet.
All right. Well, with that being said, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in a month.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Try to be a little more timely with the next one.
Yeah. See ya.